India is undergoing a major change when it comes to the education sphere as a whole. Now, what is this exactly about? Of course, the big thing that we all know about is the NEP 2020, sure. But how many of you all really know what it means for you as a student, for you as a teacher, for you as a parent? Well, today I happened to read through the entire thing, through the entire 60 odd pages, to try and understand what it really means and what you can take away from that as students and learners, of course, teachers and parents. So let's get into it without any further ado. But before we do, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and do whatever you can if you like content like this that informs you of what is happening within the education sphere. With all that in mind, let's get going. So, certain things that you always notice whenever you go through this entire document, the NEP 2020 is one of the most radical changes in the past 34 years, replacing the 1986 framework. It aims to make India a global leader by the end of 2040. What does it really aim to do? Firstly, it aims holistic development for everyone, be it creativity, be it critical thinking, be it all the different spheres of understanding. Every learner should be equipped with all of those spheres. The entirety of it should be taken into consideration. That is the most important thing that they're taking care of. Of course, people from all across the country, regardless of their background, should be provided with the same education, with opportunities that put everyone at the same level, so that there is no talent that is lost. Moreover, the very interesting change that has till date never happened in India is the focus on flexible learning, is the focus on multidisciplinarity. What does it mean? We have always had science, arts, commerce, these three streams being very different from each other. And once you go into one stream, it's very difficult to hop on to another one. So what does this do now? What do we mean by flexibility? Learners now get the choice to explore different subjects of their choice regardless of what stream they may have originally belonged to. We want to get rid of these streams, the concept of these streams entirely, and allow learners to explore their interests regardless, no matter what, without any restrictions. That is the idea. Moreover, technology, smart learning, e-learning, AI, machine learning, VR, all of these different things that can enhance how a learner learns is given a good amount of priority in this policy. Certain ground level changes that are expected. They are wanting to replace the 10+2 pattern in favor of a 5+3+3+4. 5 being the foundational years till grade 2, the first 3 from grades 3rd to 5th being preparatory, the next from 6 to 8 being the typical middle school, and your last 4 grades 9 to 12 being the secondary education or the typical high school. There is a high amount of focus within the curriculum to be aligning to the principles of integrated experiential learning. Now, experiential learning is a very good thing to look at. That is something that I personally advocate, and that is something I personally work on within my institutions. However, implementation is something that must always be considered. That is a challenge I have personally faced, and that is a challenge that will be faced by everyone trying to do that. The policy does not really standardize how someone, regardless of where they are in India, can implement experiential learning, but that is something we can look forward to as time passes. One really good change that is recommended is the mother tongue instruction, particularly at lower grades, till grade 5, preferably till grade 8. Whatever concepts are being taught, they're recommended to be taught in the mother tongue of the children, because that is the language that they're most comfortable with, and that is the language that they can learn concepts much more efficiently. That has been proven by studies, and that is something that they are wanting to implement now. In grade 10, the board exams are undergoing a change. Students will be able to give exams twice, once in March and once in May. This is something I've discussed in a previous episode as well. Grade 12 does not get this change because of the existence of competitive exams, and those schedules really did not impact. This allows grade 10 particularly to reduce that pressure, because this will be one of the first times they will be exposed to a national level competition like this. So now they get a chance to improve. Once given in March, if they're not satisfied with the results, they can give it once more in May. This allows them to attempt something like this to their fullest potential. If you now want to get into university, the NTA, the National Testing Agency, is planning to offer one or more standardized tests. They want to standardize competitive exams, entrance exams overall for university admissions. They aim to increase the gross enrollment ratio. They're trying to get more and more people enrolled into higher education. And the increased focus on multidisciplinarity and multidisciplinary education is being highlighted over here. The biggest change, of course, that has occurred, we have now given away with the typical 3-year courses. The most common will be now a 4-year honors or research based degree, where if you complete all the 4 years, you graduate with honors. 3-year, if you exit at the 3-year point, you get a regular degree. If you exit at the 2-year point, you get a diploma, and if you exit at the 1-year point, you get a certificate. Now, this allows learners to really be flexible. Say there's a learner who went into a program realizing that not the entirety of it is not really for them. They exited the first year, they're still awarded with a certificate showing that they actually spent time doing this. This becomes really useful. Now say if you're on the teacher side, the minimum qualification that you need will be a 4-year integrated B.Ed program by 2030. This will replace the typical 1 or 2-year programs that are offered after a bachelor's course, so that within less time, within more accurate curriculum, one can actually get into the workforce properly. Moreover, a national curriculum framework for teacher education is expected to be developed. However, we have not really seen a conclusive, concrete framework yet. That is something we look forward to as time passes. Moreover, if as a teacher you wish to be recruited, the focus is now shifting towards a more merit-based recruitment. This is something that should have always happened, but now is being doubled down on. More public investment towards the education sphere is expected. It is recommended that the center gives up 6% of its GDP towards the education sphere. That can significantly improve resources and facilities within center and state-run institutions. So all of your Kendriya Vidyalaya and all of the public municipality schools and all of that should get a good benefit from that. Now these are very interesting things after all, because the mission statements are pretty valid that I mentioned at the start. The policy aims to put India as a global leader, and the changes that are recommended would put Indian students at a strong competing level at the global standard. However, there are a lot of things that we are yet to see changes in. Now NTA, that's the first thing I want to cover. For it to standardize these exams, I would really wish to see it fix the logistical issues that exist within the existing exams itself. Fix the current problems, then build up newer ones. Let's just say it that way. The increasing focus on research is also useful, and it's also a good sign. However, that should reflect in the budget. Within the central and the state budgets, there is a good amount of focus going on very particular fields of research. Those are of course not the only fields of research. Moreover, academic research, academia itself does not get enough funding. That's a problem that has existed for years together, and that is something that really needs to be figured out to get people more inclined towards research and get interested and equipped with the right tools to do their research properly. The focus on vocational courses is of course beneficial because this brings in a sense of equality. You don't feel like you are some lower person to get into vocational courses. Moreover, these courses now become more accessible even at the high school level, along with typical courses that learners can explore hobbies, learners can explore different skill sets as well. However, there are a lot of inadequacies within the current system that have still not been addressed, and that is something that I have been pretty vocal about for the past, say, 3-4 years that I've been teaching. Experiential learning as a whole is not really well understood, especially when it comes to the implementation of this idea of experiential learning into the education system. That has not been addressed at all. How do you ensure that a learner is actually experiencing their learning is not really ensured within the policy, nor have there been any boosts when it comes to finances, when it comes to resources to ensure teachers and local policymakers to experiment with how they can implement experiential learning. Moreover, the coaching class Raj that I will want to talk about, learners relying on coaching classes because that has ended up creating a monopoly within these education spheres, within the private education spheres particularly. Not all competitive exam is meant for everyone, and that is something that we need to understand from the get-go. So how do we ensure that the system itself supports those learners who do not go the typical traditional path, but explore themselves, explore their varieties of knowledge and skills to go ahead with whatever they want to do? How does the system support that? There's been no clear mention of that. But all in all, there is a lot of hope when it comes to this. Particularly the private sector players are expected, are looking forward to a lot of innovations that can come into this sphere. So all in all, the NEP 2020 is a pretty useful step ahead. What students need to look out for is their own interests. What as a student are you interested in doing to make yourself into a learner? Answer that question and the system will support you. Give it some time because now the implementation has started picking up pace. Make use of what is going to come up and I'm sure that you will benefit from all of it. As a teacher, experiment with experiential learning at your classroom level itself. You will not believe how much your learners are going to enjoy learning, especially with a system like this. And thirdly, as a parent, get yourself educated within all these different levels of your child's schooling. Talk to your teachers, talk to the principal, get an idea of what what your kid is going through in school, how they are learning, and what is the path ahead. As a parent, you must be responsible enough to get an idea of what's happening because you are the decision makers till your kid turns 18. Very important for you. Now this brings me into another concept, and this is a very interesting concept that is that gets discussed a lot within the teacher circles, and that's something called as learner autonomy. And this is a concept that really benefits from the NEP. What do we mean by learner autonomy? Let's break the word down. Autonomy, of course, you're giving a lot of freedom to learners. Learner autonomy as a whole is where learners decide their course of action. If say a learner is learning a particular concept, how do they do that is on them. Now why is this interesting and exciting for educators? We can now create experiences, create scenarios through which the learner can teach themselves that concept, where they can experience using all of their senses. Why is this useful? It's because learners feel more accountable to learning. They understand the concepts much better once they feel that sense of duty, that sense of accountability, and that sense of satisfaction to have learned something entirely on their own. So creating those experiences where these learners can go into something hands-on and learn by themselves. That is what learner autonomy is all about. So as a teacher, how can you do that? Within your curriculum, why don't we try building such experiences where where a learner is going through a journey to build up the target concept step by step. That is the tenet of experiential learning that I heavily focus on. Maybe I'll make a video on it someday, but the entire idea is to have them go through a controlled experience step by step so that they really understand the concept to its depth on their own, so that they feel the sense of satisfaction of learning something really useful. And to facilitate that, critical thinking and skill building is paramount. Without critical thinking, they will not be able to go to the next step. And without skill building, they won't really appreciate each and every step, because all of those steps will definitely require a different skill set. So you get where I'm coming from. Learner autonomy can be integrated within experiential learning. Rather, it is a very important part of experiential learning as a whole. And we are not making use of it. Doesn't it sound silly? So with my learners, I end up doing a lot of these experiences every single time. Every single class we're going through something, and at the end of it, I have found them to have understood the concepts so well that be it any way of testing, be it a test, be it a viva, be it anything, they can do their job perfectly. So that is one interesting takeaway, particularly for teachers. Overall, what have we discussed today? We have discussed what the NEP is. We've looked at how it helps students, or rather, how should students navigate this, how should teachers navigate this, and how should parents navigate this. So bottom line, this is an interesting time upcoming for us. Let's make the most of it. With this, I will end today's episode. It was an amazing one. The next time I'll see you in an entirely different location, and I cannot wait. I'm looking forward to what's going to be upcoming, because this year, for whatever we'll be doing, is beyond exciting. With that thought, I'll leave you for today. Thank you and happy learning.